Good morning, everyone. Meteorologist Jim Dickey here with another edition of Tracking the Tropics. It's been a while. Dorian got us a little bit sidetracked. Of course, he had to focus on what was going on air here at ABC7 with Dorian. But since then, it's, of course, been a little bit quieter across the Atlantic. We've had a couple other storms since Dorian, including Gabrielle. But Gabrielle was never a threat to the U.S., and it is now out of the picture. It turned into a non-tropical, made the transition to a non-tropical system yesterday, and is now off the board. So no named storms out there, despite the fact that we're just one day removed from the historic peak of activity during a typical hurricane season. Still, three areas to watch. One in the southwest Atlantic, near the Turks and Caicos, the central Bahamas this morning. One in the central Atlantic, it's slowly trying to push towards the Windward Islands. And then a third out by the Cabo Verde Islands here this morning. Let's begin in the south central Atlantic. There's your two areas to watch, neither of which are showing any organization whatsoever at this point in time. Let's start with the first one on your screen, the leftmost system. That's an area of low pressure right now. A little bit of thunderstorm activity with it, but really yesterday, those thunderstorms collapsed. And this has a small window of opportunity to try to spin up. Once we get to tomorrow, anything that forms out of this will hit some high wind shear, likely falls apart. Model's not really impressed with this system. Very little to suggest this comes together. Per the NHC, a 20% chance that it does. But not too far behind, we have this system. A wave that moved off the coast of Africa yesterday is going to move quickly to the west. In fact, it's going to sort of catch up with that first system by the time we get to early next week. Next 5 days, only a 20% chance to develop, but the models are honing in on this one. Still have a long way to go before this impacts any land areas. We're not talking until next week before that gets into the Caribbean Sea. But this is by Thursday. So next Thursday, not tomorrow, a week and a day out from this recording. And I'm showing you the European forecast model, the GF forecast model, the latest runs this morning, both of which close off an isobar. These lines are pressure. So that circle means we've closed off a localized area of low pressure somewhere in the northern Caribbean. European near Cuba, the GFS a weaker system near Jamaica, but there's been a couple runs now of these models showing something trying to come together. So this time next week, we're going to be watching the Caribbean very closely, as we could certainly have a tropical system forming up there. But for the near term, we're watching this in the southwest Atlantic, also disorganized. Just a cluster of thunderstorms right now over the Turks and Caicos and the central Bahamas, but you can see the sort of extent of all that cloud coverage, of all that thunderstorm activity, stretching from Cuba and Hispaniola well northward, really all the way towards Bermuda here this morning. This is going to work its way off to the north and west. Over the next 24, 48 hours, wind shear in place. That's the deep red you see. There's an upper level low in play that's going to keep this, I think, in the near term from coming together as it works towards Florida. But once it gets to the Gulf of Mexico, that shear should wind down, and that's when I do think this thing has the opportunity to come together. The Hurricane Center giving this a 50-50 shot to develop as we get into the weekend and next week. Again, I think especially Florida Straits, Gulf of Mexico, that's when something weak could briefly try to spin up here. And what this is definitely going to do is throw some tropical moisture into southwest Florida. So you see the results of all that tropical moisture right now with the widespread thunderstorm activity. You sort of pick that up and place that over Florida this weekend. I do think we're looking at some widespread storms. So this is one solution. This is the European forecast model. It shows that wave working its way westward. Here we are by Friday afternoon. So first thing I want you to note, look at the winds. So we do have a clear counterclockwise turning going on with the winds, which marks broad low pressure. What you don't have is that closed off, centralized, deepening low. So at least per the European, even by Friday afternoon, as this nears the Florida Straits, still not a developed tropical system, but definitely a rainmaker, especially for the Bahamas. We go on into Saturday. We still have a broad, undefined low-pressure area centered right over southwest Florida on this. It's putting out quite a bit of rainfall, some heavy thunderstorm activity on the northeastern side. And then, once this moves into the Gulf, that's when the European does briefly spin up something, maybe a depression, maybe a tropical storm, has a little more time, goes a little further westward, maybe something a little bit stronger. We'll be watching for that. But again, I think as we focus in on the impacts for Florida, doesn't much matter if this comes together or not. This is going to be a rainmaker. This same model, these are the totals it's putting out, 3+ inches, northern areas and central areas of Florida, and then a little bit less to the south. However, if this moves a little bit further south, we could see those higher rain totals working into southwest Florida. It's going to be about how this comes together, where this comes together, where the locally heavier rainfall sets up, and I think that's the key. Locally heavy rain. I don't think we're talking a widespread washout at this point in time across the state of Florida from this, but somebody is likely going to see some significant rain by the time all is said and done, and that works its way westward. So there's your takeaways. This wave is going to bring some soaking rain to parts of Florida starting late Friday, lasting into and through the weekend. Yes, it could develop into a proper tropical cyclone, a depression, maybe a tropical storm once it works its way into the Gulf of Mexico. Next name on the list, by the way, Umberto. And then we'll be watching, as we go into next week, the Caribbean Sea. Models indicating something could try to come together there in the Wednesday, Thursday time frame. So yes, technically quiet for now, but certainly lots going on as we're in the heart of the 2019 hurricane season. I'm sure I will have an update on this, if not tomorrow, coming up on Friday, so keep a lookout for that. Meteorologist Jim Dickey. Until then, have a good one.